welcome again, everyone, to another episode of Disruption Drive. My next guest, Colleen McCracken, is a rare leader who speaks two languages fluently: the very high-paced patois of software business models and the gritty tire meets pavement reality of fleet operations. Her resume really is a masterclass in duality. Her roles have spanned product leadership at Adobe and the operational front lines at Lyft. And today she redefines the future of work for autonomous vehicles as the growth leader at Necture. Necture is a Series A startup currently headquartered in Europe, but they work all over the world. But they use the future of work in automotive. And when I wanted to understand the infrastructure that will power the next generation of mobility, I wanted to call Colleen. So, Colleen, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I wanted to start with a little bit of, maybe holiday cheer. So I know you definitely grew up in America, but you've traded Americana for currently living on the banks of the Danube, navigating the cutting edge world of autonomous vehicles. But in the historic land of Mozart, Beethoven, and really world-class Wiener Schnitzel, Wiener, am I pronouncing that right? Wiener Schnitzel. So tell us how that happened. And you live in Vienna.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. It was so great meeting you in Detroit earlier this year at the Move America conference. But yes, I'm spending a lot of time in Vienna. I met my Austrian husband some years ago through a mutual friend, and have found some interesting work along the way. So,
Amazing.
spending some time here for now and enjoying it. Yes, it is.
Just,
It
just,
is
just
Christmas
to,
time. Lots of Christmas markets and
yeah, well, Colleen, yeah.
glühwein and other nice holiday treats.
That's amazing. So yeah, no, Vienna, Austria is where Colleen is joining us from. And what I wanted to, I know from falling in love to just really just deciding to live in Austria. Well, Colleen really does it all. But I want to get us back to fleet management. And Colleen, you track the entire fleet industry: autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, connected vehicles, software-defined vehicles. And where do you think we're at an inflection point? And how is this, particularly in your world, how is this changing car maintenance, fleet management, and the infrastructure for what's the future of work? What's happening in the market?
Yeah, thanks, Harry, for asking. Um, so it's quite interesting to compare innovation in transportation in fleets over the last years with electric vehicles to the potential for autonomous vehicles. Um, Electric vehicles had a very interesting value proposition at first. Um, in the sense of potential for more efficient energy usage, certainly for environmental impact. It was bolstered by a number of government subsidies and programs, um, which, was pretty well adopted in Europe. There is a decent um, infrastructure for charging electric vehicles publicly as well as privately. Um, but what but adoption has been relatively um, slow paced in the sense that if you look at the economic incentive that autonomous vehicles offers, it is much more attractive. There's much more business case and incentive for fleets to consider the adoption of driverless vehicles, mostly driven by labor savings costs, eliminating the driver. Obviously, that is offset by a number of other operational costs, which, Hari, I really think I liked your article talking about the implications of said costs, how they do increase, especially in the quote messy middle of this technological adoption. And it's that chasm that has companies both really interested in the potential and has fleet managers thinking, oh, could I add a few autonomous vehicles to my fleet? What would that look like? But also, how do the unit economics work? I think the industry is um, both highly motivated by the potential and also testing out a number of different models.
And that let's dive a little bit deep on that because, of course, you're one of the experts on the total cost of ownership, and really the biggest cost are the operations and the maintenance, the messy part of the not so interesting or sexy parts of the car itself. Owning a car is nice, driving it is great, but maintaining it, operating it, and paying for fuel, tolling, parking, when it gets damaged, not fun. But I want to talk about, look, alongside the automation of the vehicle itself, the driver itself, there's also all sorts of automation going on in the maintenance of those as well. And one of your favorite areas, of course, is the future of work and jobs. What do you
Mhm.
think that looks like as autonomous vehicles become more real? And specifically, what do you think cannot be automated in a car's life cycle?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Hadi. So this is particularly relevant um, for the company I'm working with now, Necture, because they offer a series of data and insights that inform fleet management, but also they implement them with humans who have offer various services for fleet management, such as relocating a car from a low demand area to a high demand zone and or
Just
charging
to
an
be clear,
electric
that's it's
vehicle.
called shuttling in rental car parlance. That's a very big cost because I'm just explaining for the audience here. Historically, when you needed a person to go drive a car, you'd also needed someone else following that person to then bring that person back. So it was always twice as more expensive as. But anyway, I will move it to
Hmm.
Colin. That's actually shuttling is a huge cost. It looks like you're actually automating. So I'd say that's part of fleet management.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks, Harry. Yeah, so in the sense of traditional rideshare, Uber, Lyft, when I was at Lyft, we spent a significant amount of time using incentives for drivers and also customers, dynamic pricing and dynamic payouts to balance, this uh, demand prediction and have vehicles in the right places at the right times to avoid shuttling or incentivize shuttling. For example, if you had a rideshare driver take a one-way ride out to the suburbs, they might have to get back somehow
Exactly.
on their own dime, or with an incentive for them to accept a ride like that that would otherwise be inefficient, right? Um, but that said, even using all of those tools at our disposal, all those economic pricing tools, there's still a little bit left over, just a percentage left over that's still inefficient even after exhausting all those tools. And that's where even rideshare companies can sometimes use shuttling. And it's even more common when you have car sharing, such as peer-to-peer car sharing, like Zipcar, or like car rental, which you know a lot about that world from your time at Avis. So the real question is, you know, robo taxis have specific applications at this point that make sense, usually in the ride hailing space within dense urban areas right now. Obviously, the Waymo highway driving has unlocked larger service areas, but for all intents and purposes, we're talking about kind of that service area. And the real existential question is for businesses like Necture and others who employ drivers, even just to do the rideshare rides themselves, is what does it look like when the cars drive themselves?
Exactly.
When they shuttle themselves, when they complete rides themselves. Um, and so on one hand, you have I think a concern amongst drivers, right? We've seen some data come out that in cities where robotaxis are active, they're earning less. So we've seen a lot of concern, potential backlash, concern over societal effects of unemployment, um, but also we see some denial of this. Some companies like Lyft, for example, saying that they don't see robots replacing human drivers anytime soon. And I think that is also fair, a fair point, because at this point, robotaxis do not operate in every scenario, in every city, in
Right.
every geographic location, in every type of weather. It will be a long time before it's completely Cars are completely self-driving. In fact, I read some interesting data that it's expected at maximum robotaxis to replace only 15% of fleets in the US, you know,
That's a
in
fair
the
point.
next 10 to 15 years. Now in China, it could be much more. It could be 50%.
Really, you
But
think 50%, a much lower cost labor market though. I mean, China has the labor already. You think it could be
yeah,
more than
and favorable regulatory conditions and
But
risk
but but
conditions.
but tell me
Yeah.
about this though. If a technician or a driver for that matter is trying to upskill, and the future of this, of maintaining a car is it's significantly different. In fact, it's no longer wrenches or grease under your fingernails. It's, partly
Mhm.
software, it's partly electrical. There's some chemical involved on the batteries, and you need to have the, grease as well because to be honest, look, people don't realize that a powertrain
Mhm.
still has bearings. There still is coolant
Mhm.
liquid, and so you need to know that as well. So it's really four jobs in
Mhm.
one. Uh,
Yeah.
how does that upskilling work,
Well,
and who do you think should take on the onus of it?
you just answered some of the questions that you previously posed. Thank you. Yeah, so what's left, right? Yes, cars can drive themselves under certain conditions, but there's many things that humans are still required to do. So you mentioned some of the more technical skills. Yes, companies that employ low-skilled labor should be thinking about and perhaps even have a responsibility towards future-proofing these workforces and upskilling them into higher skilled roles. They might be technical. There's a range from highly technical and mechanical, also to low skilled jobs that remain. They just might look a little different. So, for example, it's very, very important with self-driving cars to have clear sensors for them to be clean. And it's still a relatively low skilled operation, though important to get correct, and it's a little bit finicky. So, for example, you want to use distilled water instead of tap water, so you don't get any hard
Right.
water spots or films on the obscuring the sensors. You want to use like a separate rag for that purpose, not the same one that you use to wipe down anything else in the cleaning process. Um, so, there are some nuances that would need to be taught to people, but ultimately that is an example of a low-skilled task that remains. Um, and what
And,
I,
and to
you
be
know, what I
fair,
think,
there's going to be
Mhm.
more volume of this. So for people who are obviously, concerned about job displacement, there's actually going to be more jobs. They may be, so the frequency of earning power is actually probably going to increase.
Yeah. And what we saw at Lyft during the COVID-19 pandemic is that low-skilled labor or I won't say low-skilled, but labor that, is driving or has a lower barrier to entry, um, is relatively flexible between different types of jobs.
Well, it's the
So
classic gig
they are,
economy workforce, right? That's what it's
yeah.
yeah,
So they're not necessarily, you know, tied to driving just because they have a driver's license. We saw many gig workers pick up other types of
right.
work, be that, food delivery or package delivery
Absolutely.
or prescription delivery or, other types of work, as it were.
And you think car
So they're
maintenance,
more price sensitive.
and car maintenance, cleaning, sort of semi-specialized labor would could be some of those future gig labor needs for
Right,
the of tomorrow. But I want to let's
right.
talk a bit about ride hailing because I know you came from Lyft yourself, and we're the autonomous vehicle. One of the probably the flagship bets is on ride hailing, right? But with those ride hailing journeys across, and Waymo is obviously clearly the market leader in city streets, but also on highways, broadly in dense urban and semi-urban areas, to say the least. It also begs the question, most maintenance depots tend to be fairly centralized, but is there a need you think, and how would the economics work if they were distributed instead? Like, basically like a gas station, because you can find a gas station pretty much on any route as long as you go there. Um, does that need to be the future of fleet maintenance as well? Simply because we just talked about the frequency of cleaning and maintenance is going to be higher on an autonomous vehicle than a previous ICE vehicle.
hmm Yeah, so you're right. There are some requirements for self-driving vehicles that make infrastructure availability a bottleneck. And also there's high risk for error, just legally high risk. And so we have seen to this point a lot of companies, rideshare or car share, who are investing in autonomous vehicles. We've seen them want control over the process.
Hmm.
However, if we look at the, there's a few situations in which a decentralized operation actually makes sense or there are companies doing it. So, for example, uh, even Waymo, when they began testing operations in certain cities, I believe Nashville and Denver, before their depot was built, they accelerated time to market by using public charging.
Right.
So they were using EVgo chargers to get started. Now, there was some public complaint about should Waymos be, using public resources. Commuters didn't want to wait for the Waymo to get out of the way. I think, Waymo was concerned about public opinion, about vandalism, and so they chose to go in-house as their general strategy. But that may not be the case in every city, in every market. I think companies who are concerned about competition, about time to market, and working with limited infrastructure might consider something, uh, you know, consider exploring operations before they have a physical depot in this way with kind of creative use of existing infrastructure. And also, companies who have fewer than 20 vehicles may find it economical to be using part-time labor as opposed to
Right.
dedicated labor.
Fleet operations companies, absolutely. But
Yeah, and
let me
I think one more example, if I may, Howdy,
please.
is so Waymo is actually still doing a semi-distributed operation, even though they own it themselves. Yes, they have central depots, but for example, in the Bay Area, in addition to their main depot, they're renting out a number of charge points in
Absolutely, and they do that.
private parking lots because it helps utilization to have
Right.
full or partial charges closer to city center high demand areas.
Right.
Similarly,
And every city they
Baidu.
have a partnership
Mhm,
ecosystem. Move in Phoenix and Miami, Avis in Dallas recently, and Los Angeles. They've got Trans, I believe. Don't,
mhm.
but definitely one of the larger transit agencies. But let me ask you a question because there's an implied question here that is an undergirding everything we just talked about. Is that look, everyone feels like Nectar maybe is slightly different, but it feels like everyone wants to have the asset light model. Everyone wants to do the software, maybe provide the sort of the matching services for labor. But this is still a car that someone has to own. Who do you think really should own the car when no one wants to take on that liability?
It's really interesting. This is a high risk, high payoff situation. I think that owning the car actually has quite a lot of value and defensibility, just from you know, a competitive kind of value proposition perspective, right? And I think that's why you see operational companies who are partners with some rideshare companies like Move, like Avis, like Transdev. You see them protecting their procedures and SOPs in a somewhat close to the chest way, because it is there's no rule book for it yet, and they're making it up as they go, um, and pulling people from a lot of different backgrounds to figure it out. But B, there's no that is their IP. It really is their IP. But I do suspect that as the industry matures, it will become more standardized, more open. You'll see more knowledge sharing and information sharing. But then, yes, of course, these companies will have to consider what it is that make them special without the asset.
And so you're still, I mean, of course, a lot of the autonomous vehicle ecosystem still wants to continue being asset light and, focus on the software, but someone's got to put the steel in the iron and the bolts in. Well, and also basically own the car for those extremes. Well, basically, it's a fair question to ask. What does it mean to own a car when you're paying every month for accessing the car anyway because your software stack is so large? It's a fair question.
Mhm.
And I don't think we know the answer yet because, it's
Mhm.
entirely possible that either a fleet operator in a ride-hailing company or a personal owned autonomous vehicle, the person who owns the car has to pay either Waymo some licensing fees to keep it autonomous, or and there's a bunch of different play. You got to pay your charge point operator money for fueling the car and maintenance. So it's going to be a complicated ownership ecosystem, I feel, that we're going to see. And I don't think we know any of the answers just yet because still autonomous vehicles by all means are a nascent product.
Yeah, and that's what I was referring to when I said that the unit economics are still being worked out a bit. There are a lot of roles and responsibilities. Partnerships are structured very differently from company to company. Um, the Tesla model could look very, very different than the Waymo model, than the Baidu model.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's definitely an exciting space to watch. I I don't think that robo taxis will replace private car ownership by any means, not entirely. I think those estimates of between 15 and 50% are realistic at this point. But I do think that there is an advantage to whoever the owner is.
right.
And I say that because even you see right now that some of these companies are not necessarily sharing data with their operational partners that could make it smarter, right? Operations today, if I could share a little bit about my research from the field at the Move conference and in other conversations, is that um, operators are it depends. If they're within a company, they may be a bit smarter. But if they're in a partnership, if the trust is not there to pass
Right.
forward data about the cars, the operators are forced into a situation where they're doing every single task to every single car when it may not be needed. So it could be more efficient if you could get a report
Yeah.
in your depot that says clean the front left sensor. That's the one that's not working properly. But right now, if they don't get that pass-through data, they're just cleaning all sensors at the
That's
same
a very
time,
good
for
point. And
example.
when you have a sensor for the sensor to figure out when the sensor is problematic, it actually adds to the weight of the car. But I want to bring you back for one final question that maybe relates more to your software background, because the other probably bigger, well, at least at this point, bigger disruption is artificial intelligence. And we have large language models, and there's definitely AV 2.0, potentially 3.0, that are using artificial intelligence more in autonomous vehicles. So what could possibly go wrong? Let me pose it in a broad way. And what do you think people should just watch out for? You're using AI to basically be your driver.
Well, a lot could go wrong, of course. Sorry. You could have a corporate surveillance state. You can have, I don't know, there was this dystopian movie on Netflix that the Obamas, co-produced where
Oh
all the
boy,
Teslas are
they've got
hacked
some new
and
careers.
and yeah, and people are referencing it. It's timely because there's a lot of videos online about Waymo's stopping in the middle of the street and blocking traffic during a recent power outage in San Francisco. And people are referencing this Netflix movie where all the Teslas start to speed into each other and self-destruct. Well, yeah,
Well,
of course, there's a lot that could go wrong in a dystopian future, but I also think there's a lot that can go right. I'm very heartened by a recent podcast I listened to with urban planning a from the city perspective. So I learned recently that it takes only 10 robo taxis on a highway to enforce everyone to drive the speed limit. I mean, it's
That's a good
virtually
point.
eliminating human death from automotives. Um, I think that's an incredible societal benefit that can't be ignored.
Absolutely. We're saving lives and on to hopefully the Jetsons are going to be a lot earlier than what the cartoon show showed us. But that's all we have time for today. So look, adoption for autonomous vehicles. Colleen McCracken definitely feels that the business case is much stronger than for electric vehicles. So all of you are listening, definitely pay attention to this absolutely massive disruption. There's going to be backlash over potential employment, but it's still a while before most human labor is replaced, or even a fraction of it is replaced. I think Colleen definitely feels that companies should have a responsibility to create that future of work, upskill technicians, and really think about the broader infrastructure of what the autonomous vehicle ecosystem implies. And more than anything else, really at this point, it feels like the autonomous vehicle industry wants to control that information flow, wants to control the maintenance process. And there's still a lot of opportunity for the partnership models to evolve and learn, but really, really help this massive disruption help society. And as you rightly said, really, really, this is about saving lives, and safety is the most important goal for all. So with that, Colleen, I wanted to thank you for your time today. I wanted to wish you a very happy holiday season in Austria, in the foothills of the Alps. It's going to be a lot more fun than you know me sitting here in Manhattan. But thank you, Colleen, for coming. And maybe you could end with just pronouncing your name the Irish way, because I know that's a very special way. Colleen McCracken is pronounced in Ireland, and I will.
Oh my God,
Okay, fine. I
Hari.
will. I will let you off.
For the record, I'm Irish American, but
I'm
I did
American, but
feel
there's an American,
I
but we did the American present, pronunciation, but the Irish
uh,
pronunciation is very unique.
I have to say Dublin when I visited last year was the first place I visited where people really recognized my name even more than the US because Colleen means girl in Gaelic and pronounced like, the Irish way, it's Colleen McCracken.
Colleen. Wonderful.
And
I will not try and pronounce that, but I will thank you once again, Colleen. That's the American pronunciation, by the way, Colleen, right? I don't know what it means. But anyway, Colleen, one of the world's experts in fleet maintenance and fleet management, head of growth at Necture, and we'll be hearing from her a lot more soon. Colleen, thank you so much for joining us right before Christmas and before the holiday season. So happy holidays again.
my pleasure. You as well.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Hari.